To complement my video review of Hollow Knight, I made this video for how to make the game better without figuring things out. There's an info card that'll link to the review video. This tips video will be... hold on. Anyway, this will contain warnings to get all missables and tips for making the game hurt less, which by definition will influence how you play the game. I will give as little information as necessary. Feel free to skip over sections if you want to stay as blind as possible. I just want you to have a good time. That's the point of this video. I'll be vague as For reference, spoilers anything that ruins the surprise or influences how you play the game, so obviously tips would be minor spoilers. But saying the name Voidheart isn't a spoiler since it doesn't mean anything out of context. The true name of the White Charm is a little more questionable since it might influence how you interpret some lore, so I won't name it. I'll be as vague as I can in all of these things. Except for the charm slide, which is the last one, which I'll flat out tell what the best charms in the game are. Of course, that's an opinion and depends on your playstyle, but I thought I'd give an extra warning for that slide since it isn't vague, in case you wanted to skip over that one specifically. It's located right after How to Avoid Pain number 4. I wanted to include these slides in my review video, but would have made it too long, so I split it out into a separate tips video. The next slide is how to avoid insanity, which I thought was the most important tip slide. I tried to make a list of everything that the game expects, but there's no way to know. Unmarked breakable walls are the most important and most numerous. All of them have environmental lore. I put them vaguely in importance order, except the most important one, which is the Weaver's Den, for which a picture would be kind of useless. This one's pretty easy to find, though, so I can be a little more vague about it. The Stalking Devout enemy, always either blocks your travel or is guarding something, and there's one that is in a seemingly pointless dead end. So attack the wall behind him. The Weaver's Den has a charm and some geo. The first image, the top left, is for finding the White Defender. The room after the Dung Defender has a diveable floor that doesn't crackle underfoot. It's immediately under that little platform. On top of the acid pipe. You can enter the room immediately after beating him, but you can't fight the White Defender until after you've beaten all 3 Dreamers. After which, this room has a King's Idol, 300 Dream Essence, the Memory Achievement, a cutscene, and NPC dialogue. Along with unlocking the Hall of God statue if you haven't done P4 yet. The Eternal Ordeal image, I copied from the fandom wiki. The instructions are clear but hard to do. Do them in the Hall of God's top floor, top right corner, but before the gate, since the first step is using the wall above the gate. It is possible to do after opening the gate, since you can double jump to get to that wall. The Eternal Ordeal has an unlockable main menu theme, and has what I would consider quality content. Just an enemy arena. Likewise, the White Defender is just a boss, obviously. Next is the Path of Pain, which is located in the White Palace. This is the most difficult platforming section in the game, and thus is my favorite part of the game. Beating it yields a cutscene and a Hunter's Journal entry, which doesn't count towards completing the Hunter's Journal, and thus isn't achievement related. I consider main menu theme to be more important than a cutscene, but I'm sure many people will disagree. Whatever, they're both important. The next row is the White Palace Nursery, which is hard to look up. Backtrack from the throne to the King statue and dive on the cracked floor. It doesn't crackle underfoot, and the cracked platforms everywhere else in the White Palace and Hive can't be broken with a dive, so the game actually hints against this being possible, you jerk. The only other... this only has environmental lore, but is obviously important implications for theories. The next is another environment only, which is in the second arch after Grimm's stage. It's an illusionary ceiling, by the way, not breakable. While you're there, cast a spell, focus isn't a spell, on the thing you find because it reacts with a red seal. The only other things that react like that are hitting your nail against the cast-off shell, where you got the King's brand, and against the head of the statue holding the cup that provided the Shade Cloak. Both of those react with a white seal. And obviously there's the Dream Seal that's on the Palace Grounds King's Mold if you don't have an Awoken Dream Nail. So yeah, seals are a thing. Next is the fungal wastes above the Spore Shroom charm, and is a shortcut to the Moss Prophet. I consider this optional since you can go through the Queen's Garden to get to the Moss Prophet, and if you go that direction, the breakable wall should be easy to guess. I've never done that direction. I wouldn't be surprised if it had cracks in that direction. The next two images are hidden rooms that contain only the art that you see there, and nothing else. The first is in the Weaver's Den, and the second is in the Tower of Love after the Collector. So now you know everything there is to know about these rooms, and so I don't need to explain how to reach them. A couple quick ones that I don't have images for. There's a breakable ceiling right before the Watcher Knights. There's a City of Tears house that has an illusionary right wall. You'll have to jump. That leads to the Gorgeous Husk, which is worth a lot of geo and is required to complete the Hunter's Journal, and thus achievement related. The Royal Waterway has a shortcut upward that has an illusionary wall leading to Eternal Immolita, which should be obvious. There's a geocache in the City of Tears behind a locked door that you can't unlock because you have to go up through an illusionary ceiling instead. There's probably some other really obvious ones I didn't name. There's also a cracked wall in the Hive that doesn't act like every other cracked wall in the game. You can't attack it, so this is inconsistent. However, there actually are hints for what to do, so figure it out yourself. And that's every problematic wall that I could think of that I found. There could be more that I never found at all, for all I know. And yeah, I know there's a couple of grubs behind illusions that I didn't list, but the grub map should narrow it down enough for you to figure that out yourself. Alright, moving on. The Spore Shroom Charm. You need to wear it in order to read the tablets and fungal wastes and one in the Kingdom's Edge, or to talk to Mr. Mushroom. There's no reason to think this charm would do that. Talking to Mr. Mushroom is required by an achievement. In fact, it's an extra ending scene, so it's also a cutscene. Lastly is that crystal laser slug named Crystal Crawler. You can kill those guys even though there's no way to know that. You can't kill a Gome, Charged Lumify, Garapede, or Void Tendrils, so there's no reason to believe the Crystal Crawler would be different. Unlike Glimback and Durandu, etc., these guys give no indication that they have a weak point, and in fact, they don't have a weak point. Fortunately, there's plenty of ways to kill them, so I'll let you figure that out. Killing them is required to complete the Hunter's Journal and is thus for one of those achievements. Required for those achievements. How to avoid missing missables. I put these in importance order. Achievement, beat the black egg before using the white charm. Void Heart changes your ending, not the white charm. This is the Hollow Knight ending, which is ending 1 with no variation. Every ending can be done in the same save file if you don't miss this one. There's no reason for this achievement to be missable. The game should let you say no to Hornet entering or just unequip the Void Heart. An upgrade, if you banish Divine, you can't buy her charms. You can after the ritual, though. This missable is justified by plot. The knick-knack, the abyss has a blue door with a forked path. Take the lower left path first. Once you take the other path, the right one, it will teleport you out and lock the door. There's no reason for this knick-knack to be missable. The door shouldn't lock, although the teleporting is nice. Looks cool. When you have an option to sit on a throne, do so before taking any items. Fun fact, you can change charms on the throne even though it doesn't save, and thus isn't a bench. Oh, and you have to sit for 10 seconds before the music will play. Most of the White Palace will lock, but only after you clear it, and thus isn't technically missable. Although, I don't think they should lock any doors, especially the Path of Pain, which some people like me want to redo. The throne, however, isn't blocked, and yet you can't sit on it if you come back. There's no reason for that, and it made me quite angry and inspired this slide. Or entire video, for that matter. More convenient, you can get multiple delicate flowers from Grey Mourner until you earn the Mask Shard, at which point you get flowers from the grave instead. If you want to give everyone a flower, it would be easier to do some before completing the quest. There's no reason the game shouldn't allow you to get flowers in both spots, but it's also not a big deal. The achievements, Banishment and Ritual, are mutually exclusive. Purity and Happy Couple are mutually exclusive. Neglect and Dark Romance are mutually exclusive. Thus you will need at least 2 saves to get every achievement. These are completely justified since it's based on choices you make, so they aren't exactly missable since you can get the other at any time. I'll give a little more detail on how to avoid pain number 4. Speaking of which, how to avoid having a bad time, or how to avoid making the mistakes that I made. Make the game hurt less to have a little more fun. I tried to put these in chronological order, but the game is non-linear. GG is behind this door in Dirtmouth, the upper image. If your shade is too far away or in a boss room, you can pay GG to teleport it to you to avoid losing all your geo. For the lower image, you see this spike wall? You want to know what's behind this spike wall? You don't want to know what's behind this spike wall. You see how my soul vessel is broken and I have 6 geo? You want to know how I died? You don't want to know how I died. Alright, Courage the Cowardly Dog reference aside, and this is a serious warning. The spike wall is in the Forgotten Crossroads. Behind is a boss named the Brooding Moloch. Do not cross it until 1, you've beaten about 10 bosses. Bosses are defined by the Hall of Gods, but until you get there, it's unclear what counts as a boss. It's a boss if it dies with an animated explosion of anything. Orange, red, darkness, flame, dream essence, or dung. Or is named Hornet, Crystal Guardian, Enraged Guardian, Mantis Lords, or is the head of a pantheon. But if you've unlocked any pantheon door, then you're ready for the Brooding Moloch. And number 2, make sure you can climb this wall with confidence. Climbing the wall is important, because I don't want you to be unable to get your geo back if you do lose to the Brooding Moloch. As for boss difficulty, I did Ascended Hall of Gods and Pantheon 5 no bindings, but the Brooding Moloch is one of the few that I still have to pay attention to after knowing every boss strategy. Which is why, from memory, I put Brooding Moloch at number 12 out of 46 bosses in the game, which is more than 34 bosses. I'm overemphasizing this. You shouldn't wait that long, because don't get me wrong, he's easy. But make sure you're significantly prepared. You could beat him as your first boss, but don't try because you won't. He is the inspiration for the Avoiding Pain slides, because of the apparent difficulty spike, even though I beat him on my second try. Make sure you beat Brooding Moloch before the Trial of the Fool or any of the Pantheons. Avoid lore confusion. The White King and Pale King are the same person. There's 2 different terms. There's 2 important lights in the game. Almost all mentions of light refer to the same one. I'm not going to explain the lore, but just helping you out so you can figure it out. And the 2 terms for the king confused me when I played. Get a lantern before doing dark areas. Seems like it should be obvious, but I didn't know there was a lantern, so I fumbled around in Deep Nest for a while. It was pretty bad. Don't do that. The first part of Deep Nest isn't that dark, but it gets really dark. get a lantern. It's super useful. The top right image, you can kill the crystal crawlers. I know I already mentioned that in the avoiding insanity slide, but I'm pointing it out again here because there's a couple places where doing that would be easier if they were dead. You know, platforming, walking around would be easier. Don't dream nail an NPC ghost. The thing I'm doing in the lower picture, never do that. It will kill them and give you 1 dream essence. It's both mean and unprofitable. On the other hand, I encourage using the dream nail on everyone that doesn't have dream essence floating around them. There's also a few corpses with a dream essence cloud that you should dream nail, and weirdly a few objects that you can dream nail. And no, you can't cheat the warrior graves with this, instead it skips their dialogue. And weirdly, the Spirit Glade are not warrior graves. You can't fight them, although the guardian will attack you, you can't fight back. If you got the Neglect achievement, there's 300 less Dream Essence, but there's still plenty. In fact, if you got Neglect and your only Dream Essence was from bosses, 0 from Whispering Roots, then you'd have exactly enough for 2400, which means that the 482 you get from the Whispering Roots can be used to skip bosses, such as not finding the White Defender, or as Dreamgate fuel. And after you talk to the Seer while holding 2400, you'll no longer need them at all, so you'll have thousands to spend. So Dreamgate is generous. Don't hoard essence like I did. Dreamgate your heart out. If you need a break from Deep Nest and just need to leave for a while, you could use a Dreamgate, or there's an exit in the upper right. There's a couple more exits, but that's the one that's always available. Personally, I could only handle an hour of Deep Nest at a time, so I had to leave and come back. Granted, I didn't have a lantern. Unlock the City of Tears hot spring door before visiting the Fog Canyon. That advice seems a little weird, but as long as the door is unlocked or you have an extra simple key, then things just might be a little less sucky. That's all I'm gonna say, except use your dream nail. You can find the Fog Canyon fairly early, but never need to go there until late game. The area isn't hard so long as you keep your hands to yourself. Specifically, don't mess with the big jellyfishes of doom on the right, named Uma. His revenge is very hard to avoid. Soul Sanctum, on the other hand, is an early area that you should do early, even though it has some of the hardest enemies in the game. I don't know what to tell you. Difficulty curves could use some work, as I mentioned in my review video. Don't try to reach the super high up ledge above Gorb in the Howling Cliffs. Yes, it's possible to jump there, and I did so, but it's very difficult and it's a sequence break. And that's not how you're supposed to get up there. How you're supposed to get up there is very late game, so don't bother with that. As for Divine, I've kind of already ruined the joke, but don't let her see any charms if you're currently broke, because you won't be able to get them back. If you can afford her charms, which I've listed the prices there, it is worth doing. But they are the 3 most expensive things in the game, by far, and they aren't that useful depending on how often you die. And they don't count for percent or achievements. So wait until after you've bought everything else. The Fountain of Burden is the next most expensive, and it requires less than half of 9k. Banishing Divine will give you your charm back if you don't care about upgrading them. Doing the ritual will not affect Divine. You probably won't accidentally obtain Neglect, but Banishment and Purity you could accidentally ruin. I'm not going to say how to get Banishment and Purity, but if you're in these situations indicated by the images, either do the thing or miss the achievement. Them's your options. You can't come back later. You're not told you have only one chance, and they don't call out if you try to leave. Which is also true for Neglect, but that triggers when you beat a boss. You can leave that room as much as you like, which is why I didn't include an image for it, since avoiding Neglect is easy and obvious and not ruined by messing around. The reason to avoid Neglect is to go for the Dark Romance achievement, but no other achievement can be accidentally ruined, except, I guess, dying in Steel Soul mode or being too slow for a speedrun. When you get Yzma's tier, go to the Lake of Unn as soon as possible. That has the best charm in the game by a margin. This is admittedly making the game easier instead of avoiding a problem, and is thus the most direct tip in this chapter. But seriously, this charm is better than Quick Focus or Baldur Shell. It will single-handedly make boss fighting noticeably easier. It's a little bit mid-game, but make a point to go back for it. Walk past Marmu the first time. It's a really long trek to reach Marmu, and Marmu is a very hard optional boss, harder than the Brooding Moloch, in fact. And there's a bench right behind him. So grab that bench before attempting Marmu, and you won't have to redo the trek. Despite what the game suggests, the completed White Charm doesn't give you a new ending by itself. The credits are unskippable 4 minutes, so after getting an ending, I'd look up the other ending requirements before beating the boss again. This point is most likely to be ignored, which is fine, because if you aren't fooled by the White Charm, then it's fairly easy to guess how to get the endings. Now for the next slide, I know there's plenty of people who have done charm tier lists, so I don't feel like I need to voice an opinion here. So, you know, just equip whatever you like. But seriously, if you're having boss trouble, Shape of Unn is incredible. Easily the best charm. Get it when you can. As I mentioned, it requires Yzma's tier. Deep Focus is good too, but only if you need it, and only if you have Quick Focus. Never equip Deep Focus without Quick Focus. It's a lot of notches, I know, but it's worth doing. If you don't need Deep Focus, then use Strength and Thorns of Agony. Shape of Unn is mid-game, so use Baldur Shell until then. Baldur Shell is really good, but Shape of Unn is good enough that you won't need Baldur Shell anymore. And since Carefree Melody is late game, you can equip Soulcatcher until then. And obviously, if you have fewer than 11 notches, you'll have to decide what you can afford, just as the devs intended. That's it. Here's a card for my review video, and here's a card for a playlist for my favorite uploads to get a sample of my Let's Play content. I'll also link to my Let's Play channel if you wanted to see what else I've played, which is currently only Mega Man ZX, but I'll play Mario Maker next and some other Switch games. Plus, if you're still listening to me, it's a good sign that you might like my content.